This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante.
Welcome to the Yanks Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Thomas Carannante, live on a Monday. The New York Yankees won their series over the weekend with the Cubs. They also scored 6 total runs across 3 games. The pitching was immaculate. They lost the finale. They got 2 squeaker wins that could actually portend well for their playoff pitching plan. And I'm so used to being angry on these podcasts that I still kind of forgot that I should be excited by what we saw over the weekend. It was all right. The offense still, I mean, there was a time when they didn't stink out loud, but now they do stink out loud again. And now they're going into a pretty important week, at least as important as it gets when your grip on the AL East is next to nothing and you've already kind of mentally accepted you're not going to win it, but you're still pretty far up on a playoff spot. In general, this week at Yankee Stadium will probably determine a good portion of the wild card race, unless the Mariners and Tigers keep things up. Odd weekend, strange week, pretty important week. Nothing is salted away yet. The Yankees need to keep fighting, and Jason Dominguez should still be here. Duke Ellis is gone, and yet Jason Dominguez won't be. Kind of a beautiful weekend at Wrigley, though, all things considered. Closer stuff, we've got options. Is it sorted? Can't say that, but the Yankees have made some changes. We now have data on Clarke Schmidt and Nestor Cortes and Luke Weaver blacking out mid-inning, as well as Luis Gil, Garrett Cole, Jamison Tyone, the most predictable Tyone start of all time. But the Yankees win 2 out of 3 from the Cubs at Wrigley Field. Anthony Rizzo gets the ovation he deserves. Nick Burdi does not get to come back to the major leagues with the New York Yankees this year. He has been DFA'd. We'll talk about all that and more. Thanks for joining us, 2 o'clock Eastern on a Monday afternoon. We'll be back Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock again next week, bumping it to Tuesday, Monday complications. But thanks for joining us. Thomas Carannante, thank you for joining me as always. Again, like a good weekend for the Yankees. And Saturday, maybe the most exciting win in weeks. I mean, we called the Nats win that ended up setting them off on another spiral. The most exciting, sneaky top 5. It was
just a fun game. I don't know if that was like they were expected to win that series, so you saw that game and you're like, wow, everything's kind of coming together. This looks cool.
I did not expect them to win 2 out of 3 from the Cubs at Wrigley, and not just because they had just lost 3 series in a row in the exact same fashion where they won the first, then dropped the next 2. But I figured, honestly, they're not set up well here. 3, pitching complications in all of these. They're facing strong pitchers across the board, and they're throwing Gil and Schmidt coming back from injury, and Nestor piggyback, and Tyone, is going to show out against the Yankees, and you hope Cole can match. He does. They lose that by the skin of their teeth, but they don't give up a home run the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
They give up 2 runs the whole series. They don't give up an earned run in this series. Cole got victimized by Gleyber Torres. You got to win tight games, and the Cubs offense have been putting up 10-plus runs in a wide swath of recent games. So to shut down the Cubs offensively to this degree, you want to sweep, you don't get it, but you still do learn a good deal about what this pitching staff and what a revamped plan could bring.
Look, credit where credit's due. That was awesome. Why am I wearing my Cubs hat today, folks?
That's a good question, and one that I had as well.
I had this hat. I used to have a Cubs hat with the old school Cub on it, and I loved it. It was back when I followed Alfonso Soriano around because he was my favorite player when I was younger, and I bought a Cubs hat. And then it blew off my head on 6th Avenue in a gust of wind, got ran over by a New York City bus. So that was the end of it. And then my wife got me this one. Thought I wanted a Cubs hat for fun because I had one before that got destroyed, but really I just wanted that other one. So I've had this for a while. Don't really care about it, but I do like hats. Repping the Cubs today because they lost this series. They gave the Yankees this series. The Yankees didn't win this series. Yankees didn't win this series. They scored 6 runs in 3 games. 17 hits, 14 walks in 27 innings. That's terrible. Awful. I've learned nothing more about this offense. Look, who'd they face? Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad, and Tyone.
Jordan Wicks was real bad.
Jix. Wicks was the left-hander, standard operating procedure when you play the Yankees. and a rookie. That's always a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, the Yankees got all the runs they needed because, again, have to credit the pitching staff because the Cubs scored 2 runs in this series and did not put an earned run across the plate. But you look at the Cubs stats, 21st in average, 21st in home runs, 15th in OPS, and that's after this massive recent surge that they've had. This is a 500 team. Solid, unspectacular. Could easily think about if you could catch the Yankees doing what they did this weekend offensively on a random week in a random month. The Cubs are doing that more probably throughout the year. We'll say, though, Clarke Schmidt's return, as promising as it could possibly get.
Dirty.
Nestor Cortes in relief. Absolutely.
Dirty.
Really sick. Luis Gil's return from the IL. Looked awesome. Garrett Cole twirling another really good start. To me, the only thing I would say is that, it's a series win. It doesn't distract from the main problems. I just laid out some of the stats where those are just baseline stats too. I'm sure we could dive in a little bit deeper and find some more discouraging aspects, but coaching failure yet again. You go up against a pitcher that was in your building for 2 years. You know exactly what he throws. You don't score any runs. I don't know how this continues to happen with every former player that the Yankees face, especially someone who used to be a pitcher whose profile is well known, and who is, Jameson Taillon, solid pitcher. But again, we've seen him get got plenty of times in 2 years in the Bronx. The fact that the Yankees couldn't sweep this series, you can't ask for a sweep. I understand that. We discussed that a lot on this podcast, but if you don't give up an earned, there's always something left to be desired in all of these series, whether it's the Yankees don't win the games that they should, whether it's they lose in letdown fashion, whether it's they make the win more difficult than it should be. And in this situation, they win the series and you're still just like, but how did we not sweep? And you know what? I watched the first 2 games, innings 1 through 9, took a break from watching football yesterday, watched Gleyber Torres try to backhand a ground ball that was hit directly at him. And then the Cubs scored the 2 runs and I turned it off. I said, why am I doing this? It's NFL week 1. Let me enjoy my life. There's going to be 40 more Yankees games I could watch this year. I don't need to do this.
Well, that's why I didn't enjoy it. That's another reason I felt like I should be coming into this podcast hot and angry is because I watched the NFL yesterday.
Yeah.
I watched the Giants.
I'd be much more mad if I had nothing to do yesterday. Nothing else.
I watched the Giants, and so I was like, all right, time to strap it on for another angry episode of the Yanks Go Yard podcast. And then I remembered, wait, the Yankees actually won 2 out of 3. Never mind. It was the Giants who sucked. This has nothing to do with this podcast.
Yeah.
Yankees were fine. I mean, again, yesterday they get a free out in the first inning. Cubs run into one for no reason on a simple ground ball.
Yeah.
So they're one out away from getting out of this inning, and Gleyber Torres gives the out right back. And, of course, they give up 2 runs on a bloop. Aaron Judge appears to be running out of gas in center field a little bit. I'm not sure why we're still running him out there every day at the position. We have Jason Dominguez. I mean, I don't know if anybody's heard of him. We do have Jason Dominguez hanging out. We're getting closer and closer to that magic number. The 12 games left in the season. Oh, now there's no service time issue. We come up for the last 12. We've only got 19 left, but 7 of them are this week, Royals and Red Sox. And the schedule gets a little bit less insane because the Royals swept the Twins over the weekend. So now the Royals distance themselves from the Red Sox a smidge. They're 6 games up. So now every Red Sox win over the Orioles, the Red Sox are facing the Orioles Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, isn't a potential disaster for the possibility of them sneaking into the playoffs, depending on what the Yankees do against the Royals. Now it's the Twins who we have to watch. It's the boundary to entering the wild card picture. And the Mariners and Tigers are both tied in the loss column with the Red Sox and 1/2 game ahead because they both have an extra win. Glad to get that all out in the open for everybody. The Yankees are currently 10 games up in the loss column on those bottom teams that are not in the wild card race with 19 to play. They're also 1 game up in the loss column on the Orioles with, again, the same 19 to play. It still feels like a Herculean task to get the Yankees to the finish line with the AL East trophy rather than just a wild card spot. But hey, we still do have to talk about it because they are leading the division at this moment in time. So it would feel ridiculous to get on a podcast and be like, here's the path to the 4th wild card. And it's like, well, actually, they're literally winning the AL East. So you have to acknowledge it. but half game lead, which is really a 1-game lead in the loss column, still don't feel like that's legitimate. They had a chance to extend it yesterday. 2 feels real. Once they're up 2 in the loss column, you can talk about it. 1, that's just a bad day. But here they are leading the division. But good win over the weekend. Good series victory. Starting to feel impossible. And when Luke Weaver with a 3-0 lead, when the pitching had dominated all of Friday, walks Cody Bellinger, falls behind Cortes, finish him off, you're like, wow, just allergic to it. Like, even after Weaver strikes out the first 2 batters of the inning, and you're like, good job, just one. Okay, still just one. Okay, just you throw strikes now. We just need one. You can even won't kill you. Let's strike these, and then he does eventually get the job done. But yeah, series win. The vibes have to be a little bit higher than maybe we thought they would be entering the weekend. We could have been in absolute disaster mode this weekend. We really could have, because the Cubs had been hitting. The Yankees have not been hitting. The Yankees didn't wake up over the weekend. If the pitching isn't spectacular, like you said, they lose this series. They score 6 runs in 3 games. The Cubs have been scoring 5+ runs a game for several weeks now. So they could have gotten blown out. They didn't. It's worth noting that the offense isn't where we needed to be. This is the second series they've ever played without allowing an earned run in franchise history. 1925 against Cleveland, and then this weekend for James Smythe of the YES Network. One of those Cleveland games, they won 4-3, so shudder to think about the defense in that one. But again, no earned runs, and they swept that one. They probably, if you told me entering the weekend, hey, they win the series and it's almost a sweep, I would have been very surprised and very excited. But like you said, there's always a reason to be slightly let down, and Garrett Cole getting outdueled by Tyone is that reason. Although
on Thursday,
I would always rather win the first 2 and lose the third, as long as the third one isn't a catastrophic blown save. Because when you've banked the series win and you don't have a rubber game, it's a nice feeling. And day games, Friday and Saturday, you get to go out on Friday and Saturday night. You're not side-eyeing a blurry television 20 feet away from you at a dive bar. I've done it. We've all done it. You don't have to do that unless you want to watch the highlights, which, again, we've all done that. Maybe I want to watch the highlights, but you don't have to pay attention every minute. I think Aaron Judge hasn't homered in like almost 2 weeks now. Juan Soto kind of slumping. One suitable offensive inning all series. But I think we did learn some important things about the pitching staff, about Luis Gil, about Clarke Schmidt, about Nestor Cortes and Luke Weaver, who could be different flavors of closer. And I'm not ready to say I was wrong that Nestor stuff doesn't play up out of the bullpen. But I will say I walked into the Nestor bullpen experience thinking, okay, we're going to get something akin to the same Nestor, and I don't understand why 1 inning of Nestor is going to be preferable, but 1 inning of Nestor, he got out of the lone jam in that game and then just effortlessly ticked off no-hit innings aggressively like a bulldog until the end of the game. And we can get on the Yankees for managerial decisions, and we will, but I will say 2-0 game. Nestor's got 3 1/3 hitless, pretty effortless, pretty speedy. Conventional wisdom is, even if he doesn't blow the save, even if he does blow the save, you'll still be happy you left him in. I think.
Yep. Fully agree.
So you need to learn, you've won the first game. You've got a 2-run lead in the 9th. You need to learn what Nestor has out of the bullpen. And this isn't going to be definitive. It's still going to be a small sample size. He won't be facing the Cubs in the postseason. But I think for data collecting purposes, he needs to start that 9th. And the Yankees agreed. They listened, and he started it, and he finished it real quick. So we'll get to Nestor in a bit, but I think Luis Gil and Clarke Schmidt, the returning players, the people who knocked Nestor into the piggyback role for now, Gil looked like a different guy in that he started the game 94, 95 max, 92 mile-an-hour fastballs in that first at-bat. I think a lot of us were like, this isn't the guy we've seen. He blazes 97, 98. Something's very wrong. It seemed like something was very right. It seemed like it was by design. He hit 97, 98 when he needed it a couple times throughout the game, and that was 6 one-hit innings that didn't feel like, because you had those first inning concerns. It would have surprised me to hear that he had been 1-hit dominant by the end of the game, but he was 7 Ks, and then the bullpen goes hitless. So that's a combined 1-hitter on Friday. He played a major role in that, 6 full innings of dominance. And then Saturday, Clarke Schmidt was coming off a rehab outing where I would say he looked like himself, but like a version of himself that was still getting up to speed. The pitches had the same velocity. still hitting the corners for the most part, but a couple earned runs in that one. You wonder what he looks like in his first game back. And he completes 5 innings on 75 pitches as long as there isn't an outfield defense gaffe from Juan Soto. Instead, his final runner is standing on third. It's only a 4 2/3 inning outing, but I don't know. That's why I say Clarke Schmidt's too important and valuable to go to the bullpen and be a closer option, because Cole, Gil, Schmidt, Rodon, that's a playoff rotation.
Yeah. Watching what Clarke Schmidt was able to do. I mean, how much should we criticize this last week when he was coming back from injury? Why is he out for almost 3.5 months with the lat injury and no update? And it's because the Yankees were, again, buying. They think they have all the time in the world to buy. Oh, yeah, no, we'll get them ready for down the stretch in September when it's a super heated division race because we failed to get any cushion in front of us because we didn't bring our number 2 starter back. And
even one bad outing would be an absolute killer.
Yeah. Well, you bring him back down the stretch when he needs to get up to game speed, which are essentially trial outings, and you're going to risk a dud at that point. It's crazy to me. And again, I would have less criticism for the Yankees if they had any sort of communication and revealed anything about his injury. But guess what? They didn't. They were quiet the entire time. They didn't say anything and said, we're just getting updates from Clarke Schmidt directly from media members. And he's saying, yeah, I'm good to go. I started my throwing program on June 28th. It is now the beginning of August. I don't know. But yeah, his return and how effective he was against a major league lineup was beyond comforting, because we know that this Yankees rotation needs stability. And, I'm thinking about it a little bit more. Like, I really don't know if Marcus Stroman is going to be on this postseason roster.
No, I really don't think he is. Yeah. And I had a friend over the weekend tell me when I said that it was ridiculous and he's going to be around next year, so they can't burn that bridge. And I agree that it's an interpersonal disaster. I don't think it's good that they're probably going to have to burn that bridge. But what does he do, and how does his stuff play up out of the bullpen? Like, maybe you carry him over like a Tim Meza, who's somehow still here. But I think every member of the Yankees bullpen is too valuable to let go at this point in time. And I think Nestor is going. I mean, we saw how Nestor played up in the bullpen.
Yeah.
I don't understand how Stroman stuff plays up in the bullpen, but I didn't get Nestor either. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he attacks more out of the bullpen and maybe he's able to bring that fire. But I need to see it then if I'm going to carry him on the playoff roster. And it is ironic that Brian Cashman did not get Marcus Stroman in 2019 because he said he wouldn't be a difference maker in the playoff rotation. And Stroman pointed out like 10 times that year and the next summer, oh man, Cole's their only starter. What are you talking about? Depth not there, not happening. And here we are at the end of the season, and a season where the Yankees have kind of struggled in the rotation for most of the second half, and still I don't really see a path. And that's not even meant to discredit his accomplishments this season. He's been solid.
Yeah.
He's given them good outings when they've needed it. He found a way to give them length against the Cardinals the other day on that Friday night, but he has not shown me that he can miss bats. He has not shown me that the velocity is there. And he right now looks like a competent 4 or 5 starter who got them through the year, but can't get them through the biggest month of the year. And I'd like to be proven wrong. And I feel like he will probably be carried, but I don't see it.
Look, we were wondering, in the beginning of the season, right? It was the Luis Gil, Nestor, Cortes argument. It's like, well, Luis Gil's pitching like this. Nestor's obviously pitching well, but when you look at the postseason rotation, it's Cole, it's Rodon. Based on Clarke Schmidt, the way he finished last year and started this year, it was Clarke Schmidt. And then you're looking at Luis Gil the first month of the season, and you're like, this guy's in the rotation. This guy's in the playoff rotation. Doesn't make any sense for him to not be in the playoff rotation. Like, then we sat here and we were like, okay, well, we're going to come to a point, right, where we run into this innings limit argument with Luis Gil, or he runs out of gas, or he inevitably gets injured. We don't know. But if he doesn't, we're going to have to talk about, down the stretch, okay, is he actually in this rotation? As the season wore on, you're like July. It's like, yeah, still pitching better than Nestor, and would still probably rather his power stuff out of the rotation rather than in the bullpen, because we know how erratic he can be at times, and that's not going to play up in the 8th inning when you need to prevent a runner from second from scoring. But now you look at it and it's like, yeah, this is clearly the choice. And we either need to see Nestor in the bullpen or we need to not see him at all. So I think you're right. I think it was experimental purposes. The Yankees did it right. Aaron Boone stood his ground in the best manner possible by leaving Nestor Cortes in for the 9th inning. That's where you're collecting the data and knowing if these guys are built for the moment. Nonetheless, I think Luis Gil clearly just needed that little reprieve, back injury or not.
Mm-hmm.
Efficient, 89 pitches in 6. I'll take that. Usually he's a little bit more laborious than that. What I noticed, and I don't know if there is a larger trend here, but when he pitched against the Cubs, it was mostly a fastball slider mix. He only threw 11 changeups. Back against his start against the Guardians, right before he went on the IL when he got rocked, 36 fastballs, 26 changeups, 16 sliders. You go back the start before that against the White Sox. Should we even count that? He's going to beat the White Sox. But again, 46 sliders, 42 fastballs, and then pitched well against the Phillies, 43 sliders, 30 fastballs, got rocked against the Reds, and he had 37 fastballs, 28 changeups, 18 sliders. So it seems like
Sox beat him. White Sox beat him.
The White Sox beat him?
Yep, that was the 12-2 game.
And they rocked. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, so that's a little bit more, but that's more sliders than fastballs.
Yeah, he just had no command in that game.
He had no
command start at all. So
that could be an aberration, but you look at these other ones where it's like he needs the fastball and the slider going in continuity, and then he's just got to drop the changeup in there when the batter is least expecting it. And I think we saw perhaps one of the best mixes of him doing that on Friday. So it's good to see that there was nothing seriously wrong with him in terms of his back, and clearly he probably just had a little tweak and needed a breather. But yeah, you're looking at the postseason rotation. It's Garrett Cole. I don't know who's going to be number 2. I guess we can start wondering that over the next couple of weeks. But behind him is Luis Gil, Carlos Rodon, Clarke Schmidt. In terms of Nestor to the bullpen, which I think is a talking point that warrants more of a discussion rather than just his performance. Anybody see his response after the game? Anybody aware of that? Did you tune in? Because Nestor Cortes was asked about moving to the bullpen.
I think importantly, this caught me by surprise because if you watch him on the field with Meredith Maragovitz after the game, he said none of this.
Yes.
He was like, whenever my, number's called, I go out there and do my job. I
watched that to make sure. I was like, was it in this interview? And it wasn't.
Yeah, saw there's a guy on third. Obviously Clark's throwing a great game, so I know it's my job to make sure that guy doesn't score, and he didn't, and I was just excited to do my job today. And then this quote got sent to us, and I was like, well, that's not real, because I watched him talk, and he was like, anything for the team, and I was like, okay, that was boilerplate and nice and fine, all you want to hear. And then this was a very real quote. He didn't say it on the field. He took it to the locker room, and then he kind of went off.
When reporters asked him, I guess they get about it again, transitioning to the bullpen. And again, this was a one-time transition, right? Aaron Boone has made it clear he's just going to the bullpen for this turn in the rotation.
So far.
And apparently that wasn't communicated because Nestor said, obviously, I was upset. I feel like amongst all the starters, I've been the workhorse here. Once Garrett Cole went down, they picked me to be the opening day starter. Not necessarily the number 1, but the opening day starter. I had to switch my routine there, and now they do this. I'm never going to back down from a challenge. I'm never going to leave my teammates out to dry. You're always going to get my best effort, no matter if I'm happy or not. That's what I did today. I just came out there and proved that I could be put in any situation, and from here on out, if that's what my role is, then I'll accept it. Okay, so let's get the easy part out of the way here. Excellent response. I don't think we could ask for anything more from a guy who clearly has been blindsided or has felt disrespected in some sense, and he's putting the team in front of him, which is what you need to win a World Series or go on a deep playoff run. We've seen how team chemistry alters that to the utmost degree because, again, talent can only get you so far. You need this extra edge going into the postseason and camaraderie and understanding of the roles and who's top dog and who's not. It's that hierarchy that does make the most successful championship teams. But the bigger red flag to me here is the way that he responded. He could have just said, you know what? This is my role. This is what Aaron Boone asked me to do. I said yes, and I'm going to help this team win no matter what. Based on what he said in this quote, when asked from reporters, he was very much blindsided by the decision. He was not expecting it. It clearly wasn't a topic of conversation previously, which blows my mind because he had one of the worst stretches of any starter in this rotation this year. For that month of he was giving up an earned run an inning for like 3 or 4 starts. So the fact that there was never a discussion about Nestor Cortes potentially going to the bullpen, or forget about Nestor Cortes, any starter for that matter, the starter should be in the room and Aaron Boone should be like, hey, we have too many starters. It's a good problem to have, but 1 or 2 of you are going to be in the bullpen come playoff time. One of you might be off the roster. I don't know. We're trying to figure it out, but this next month is going to be very integral in determining that. So here you go, guys. Instead, it's more of this lack of, again, on the surface, don't know. The way that Aaron Boone responded to it too, very much sounded like that was exactly what happened, at least from my perspective. But it's more of the Yankees' lack of honesty, the lack of candor, the lack of transparency, and it doesn't make for good teams. It creates bad vibes and fractures that you don't want. Like, go back to the 2020 playoffs when Gary Sanchez was rightfully benched for Kyle Higashioka, but then said to the media, like, I have no idea why this happened. And sure, there might be a lack of self-awareness among players in general because they're striving to be the best that they could possibly be, and they're focusing on themselves, and they're like, well, I'm playing my best. Why am I going to get replaced by somebody else? I'm bringing everything that I have to the table on any given day of the week. And like, that's the competitive edge. And there is some merit in that. But when you're confused or like, there was never any conversation of this, this kind of just came out of nowhere. That's one example of this regime doing that. How about the playoff start with Davey Garcia and J.A. Happ? That's another one. I'm not going to go back to 2018 and 2019 because I don't know if my brain Rolodex is capable of it, but you have the Jordan Montgomery trade in 2022 where nobody was consulted about trading one of the best starters who was an important part of the clubhouse, and they just did it. Same thing with trading for Josh Donaldson. Same thing with letting Aaron Hicks on the 3rd game of the season in 2023 complain about his role with the team, as if there wasn't a discussion with Aaron Hicks about that at any point. Hey, Aaron, what you did in 2022 was borderline unacceptable from an effort standpoint, from a body language standpoint, from a performance standpoint. So like, yeah, your role is going to be shaved back a little bit in 2023. No one had that conversation. So now we're running into it again, and it's at a crucial juncture of the season where we don't want guys feeling uncomfortable or disrespected or whatever. I mean, I guess maybe if this is the Yankees' plan to motivate people and light a fire under them, sure, I guess, but it's never worked in the past. So why is it going to work now? Moving him to the bullpen is the right move. Not talking to him about it previously is crazy. It just is.
And we're lucky that he came through because, J. Happ didn't, and J. Happ didn't want to do that, and J. Happ wasn't consulted. And the genius plan, I mean, that I don't want to call that the beginning of the end for this current regime of the Yankees.
It kind of was, though.
No, but the only reason I wouldn't call it that is because I thought the rest of 2020 was garbage also.
Yeah.
Like, they got out to like a 10-2 start and then just immediately lollygagged for the rest of the month and a half. Now, that was a season unlike any we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But they get thrown to this giant expanded playoff field at the end of the year. They win a dominant Garrett Cole start in Cleveland, then an all-time playoff classic in Cleveland that would rank towards the top of any, exciting playoff victory list if it wasn't an empty stadium and almost 100% forgotten. Sorry, Dodgers fans. And then they go to San Diego. What the hell was this season?
Crazy.
To play Tampa Bay, and they win game one, and they win game one kind of going away. And Tampa was the runaway favorite of that fall, and we were sort of hey, they signed Garrett Cole, but they looked like an also-ran during the regular season, and Eric Kratz is getting meaningful ABs, and what are we watching here? They have a chance to put their stamp on that series, and instead they come up with this asinine plan to catch the Rays off guard. It doesn't catch the Rays off guard at all. The Rays lineup is built to crush J. Happ, and J. Happ doesn't want to do it, and they lose, and then they lose the series. They get it to 5. Good for them. And then game 5 goes not well.
Imagine being a bitch about that, though. I'll still never understand it.
J-Happ was a ridiculous Yankee. He was an old man who had a successful second half of 2018, then made one of the worst game 1 playoff starts of this franchise's history. It was awful at Fenway Park, and they said, well, we can't lose that. Why bother figuring out a way to upgrade that? So obviously that person's coming back for a long time. I understand the role Happ played needed to be filled, but you could have looked elsewhere. Continue to fill. And again, they also capped themselves out. They're like, we're going to get J-Happ.
Well, let's do this.
Yeah, we're going to get J-Happ for this weird sum of money. But don't worry, it's not just insurance. It's actually one of our main moves, and we're not going to be spending on anything else. That might have been the beginning of the end, although I love 2019. Happ got walked off by Carlos Correa that year in that postseason as well. But the Stroman conversation that we're going to have soon and Nestor getting sent to the bullpen, look, it worked, and I'd like to see more of it. And I don't know if we're going to see more of it, but we're going to in October, more than likely. You wonder if they had the conversation with Stroman, too, and it didn't go well, or they didn't have the conversation with either of them and just blindsided Cortes, and Stroman's excited that he didn't get blindsided. In terms of playoff roster, I mean, I guess Stroman's probably a favorite to be the last man on the playoff roster and just like a bulk guy if they need someone to cover innings in a bad game or in a game where they have a massive lead, which is unlikely to happen because you look down the current roster and they expanded in order to get additional rehabbing names onto this list. Tim Mesa still here. I really don't think he's going to be an October factor. I think he's getting DFA'd for Lou Trevino in a matter of days, and if not him, Cody Poteet. But man, they do have a history that we can't ignore of carrying weird middling lefties on playoff rosters just to say, hey, we did, we got another lefty in here. Do you remember 2019 Tyler Lyons making the club?
I do.
I sure do. Did Tyler Lyons impact the 2019 season at all? No. But was he carried on the playoff roster? Absolutely. And then he was kind of okay. They obviously want to gather as much information as they can on Tim Mesa before letting him loose. I don't think he's making the playoff roster, but they've only got 2 lefties on the active roster right now, and it can't be ruled out. So if let's say Trevino has a successful rehab and he joins the Yankees for the final 2 weeks of the season, is that enough to carry him on an October roster over Tim Mesa, who you probably would have had to DFA to get him onto the roster in the first place? I don't know. They're going to delay that decision as long as they can. But in terms of people on the active roster that Stroman's going to make the postseason roster over, get Mesa out of there because he's the expanded roster spot right now. So he's not even up for consideration for October as currently constructed. The only guy on the active roster that I think he might replace is Mark Leiter Jr. And that, I mean, right now, again, Stroman and Leiter Jr. are both on the active roster. So you could just axe Mesa, never bring up Trevino, never bring up Poteet, and carry both Leiter Jr. and Stroman. But if you want that second lefty, who's making the act, or Trevino's great, or Poteet's great, who's more likely to make the playoff roster, Marcus Stroman or Mark Leiter Jr.? That's what it comes down to.
I can't even think about it. I don't even know how we're in this position with a lack of lefties. I don't know how we're in this position with this bad of bullpen depth, which makes me believe now that they will have to carry Stroman and Cortes in a relief role because
even if Stroman doesn't really do anything for you, like you just still got to bring him along.
I mean, but Stroman does. I don't know. There is value because any postseason game can go off the rails. We know of Carlos Rodon's first inning struggles. You think if he gives up 3 runs in the first inning and there's, still 2 runners on base, like you're not going to have to do a quick hook there. And then you just bring in Stroman or Cortes and see what you got for the next 4 innings. Like that saves your high leverage relievers. It doesn't really hurt your longer term outlook for the pitching staff throughout the rest of the series. Just something to consider. And then, maybe there's a situation where like it's early in the series and the Yankees get off to a quick 4-0 lead and then the starter blows it in the second. Like maybe at that point he says, all right, we're going with one of the premier starters so we don't let this game get out of hand. And now we have Cortes or Stroman in our back pocket for a later game in, games 2, 3, or 4 or whatever, and then they could figure it out. So there are ways to go about this, but it's still discouraging to know that this is what it is.
The likeliest thing, I think, is that Stroman and Leiter Jr. get the spots. Mesa's out. Trevino, who has an 11 ERA and limited duty at AAA, never sees the bigs this year. Cody Poteet would fill a similar role to Stroman, but right now they're going to have to ask themselves, like, we're locked into Stroman for next year. Do we really want to disrespect him and leave him off the playoff roster in favor of Cody Poteet? The answer is probably no. And also Stroman in October probably has a higher chance of success than Poteet anyway. But who knows, really? And then Scott Efros, I guess we'll just never see him again. Like, pending injuries, which are always a reality, I feel like this is probably the group.
Yeah, because our buddy, Nick Burdi, gone.
He's not. He ain't the group.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's going to clear waivers, right?
You would think so. But a very surprising DFA over the weekend, and somebody who we maybe thought was in that Trevino Poteet bucket, who we'd see come back before the end of the year. Nick Burdi started the season as an injury-plagued journeyman, former top pick, but he was one of the few guys who could get swing and miss. He was hitting 98 to 100. He had a great spring training and deserved to crack the opening day bullpen. We said he'd be here for a good time, not a long time in all likelihood. Turned out that was 100% accurate. He struck out 12 in 9 2/3 innings. He had a lot of very solid representative outings. One nightmare fuel outing at Tampa when they almost gave up a 6-0 lead in the late innings at the Trop. He went on the IL. He got hurt multiple times. He hasn't really been routinely cracking 95 for months down there in the minor league level, which I think goes below the surface because you just see, oh, he's back. Oh, he's been demoted. Oh, he's got an ERA in the 3s. Okay, I guess. And this is somebody that we have to believe in down the stretch. They instead strip away his roster spot to bring Schmidt and Ian Hamilton back to the big club on Saturday. And that's one of the very few things that this series lacked for me as well. I wanted to see Ian Hamilton get in there because I think he might be an October closer along with Weaver and along with Nestor and along with Tommy Canely. I want to see what Hamilton has. He's got to pitch Monday night. I would say
tonight. On Monday Night Raw.
Whether it really fits or not, whether they're down 6-1 or up 10-2, or it's a 3-2 game and you're kind of scared to do it, I kind of want to see him in this game. But he doesn't go over the week. Even Clay Holmes, 8th inning Clay Holmes yesterday, pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm glad he got into one game because I don't want him on an eternal pause. I'm glad he got into one game this weekend too. But the Burdi for Hamilton move maybe shouldn't have been shocking, but it surprised me that they've coddled the asset along all year, and then right at the end of the season when they should be auditioning, people were like, well, we've actually seen enough at AAA and it's going to be a no for me, dog.
Yeah, that's the thing with me. It's, again, another asset that you've clung to, and instead of just cutting ties when it became obvious that Nick Burdi was not going to be able to help you because of his injuries and the fact that he wasn't on the field often, like, could have been a roster spot you cleared at the trade deadline for something else in terms of 40-man or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know the specificities that go into it beyond that, but on the surface, it's like we all see the writing on the wall. And of course, the Yankees take it down to the last possible moment when they can't really afford to do that. Could have afforded to, experiment with other names and opted not to do that. So now I guess maybe if there is a plan for a long relief situation in the postseason, which could be seriously beneficial, I would respect that. I don't know if that's a plan. I think they just might be throwing shit up against the wall, trying to figure out what works. And that's what's upsetting. But anyway, the bullpen and the pitching staff as a whole showed out this weekend. It was a perfect storm of them pitching well and the Cubs just forgetting how to play baseball. I think that's a fair assessment.
Bad weekend for them Chicago Cubbies, who were on the fringes of the wild card race and still are, but are less so than they could have been if they'd brought the bats.
Yeah. They had 8 hits in this series, dude.
Yeah, I don't know.
8 hits and 8 walks. That's 16 base runners in 27 innings.
And I tell you what, It felt like it because we're so conditioned to like waiting for the other shoe to drop, and here's the disaster, and here's the blow up relief inning, or here's Gil giving up 4 runs after a 3 shutout, and they were kind of just not really threatened. The Yankees gave away 2 runs in the first inning yesterday, and we were all watching football, and they had already won the series, and I couldn't get that mad at it, and I wasn't happy, but I wasn't throwing a shoe, and Friday and Saturday, you know, again, Luke Weaver putting 1 guy on base was like fingernail chewing time in a 3-0 game. Like, they were very efficient, and this was a powerhouse weekend for Yankees pitching staff that really could have used it. And again, was executing an October vision in a hostile environment. I wouldn't call Cubs fans uniquely hostile, but they needed this series.
They bring the energy. Wrigley Field's a fucking energetic place for sure.
The Anthony Rizzo ovations, which we can go into, Mr. I want to retire as a Yankee, which threw a little wrench into the weekend. But like, I wouldn't call Cubs fans hostile, but I would say engaged, and they treat those Friday afternoon home games reverentially. I was at a Friday afternoon Wrigley home game 3 weeks ago myself, and it was 1:20 local time, 2:20 Eastern. And I thought, that's pretty weird. I don't remember that exact quirk. And there were fans walking around the stands wearing shirts that said Friday at 1:20. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like, you call out of work, you go to the Friday 1:20 game, and you get loud and you make noise and you intimidate the other team that doesn't really understand why they're playing Friday at 1:20 either. Good crowds all weekend. So again, a hostile environment. I don't know. They weren't ravenous. They weren't banging on the ivy. They weren't trying to cannibalize.
It's very clearly an away game. Like, they are loud when the Cubs are at bat. They are loud when there is a big moment. There's constant crowd noise throughout the game. It feels like it's a sellout crowd constantly.
And that Paredes at bat when Luke Weaver walked Bellinger with 2 outs was a tough AB. He was fouling off a lot of pitches. The crowd was going wild.
Yep.
That was a save situation. There's a reason Luke Weaver said I blacked out, because that was good baptism.
Yeah.
Not necessarily by fire, but by like a hot match.
But again, what all of these guys needed a month and a half ago when Clay Holmes was starting to come off the rails. It's like, all right, Clay, you know what? We're either going to throw you in the 8th tonight, or we're going to give you the night off. We're going to give Weaver and Canley's on fire with his changeup. Weaver's throwing 98, dotting the corners. We're going to see what we can get out of the 9th from them. We're going to work in a little ecosystem here. Instead, they didn't. They saved it for the last 3 weeks of the season, and now it's guys in unfamiliar spots who have to get and latch on to these new roles. Same goes to Nestor with what he said. But again, my biggest takeaway from this series is the Yankees' inability to step on the opponent's throat. The opponent scores 2 runs in the series, you don't sweep it. They get 16 base runners in 27 innings, you don't sweep it. Every game comes down to a save situation against a team that can't score runs and has inferior pitching. So still, in a sense, they're playing down to their competition. They're lucky the Cubs couldn't register 1 home run. Pretty crazy that didn't happen. But yeah, this is not a gift you're going to get when the playoffs come around. This is not a gift you're going to get when you have to face the Orioles in a crucial 3-game stretch that's probably going to decide the division later this month. So, yeah. But what was nice, though, was Wrigley welcoming Anthony Rizzo back. How about that?
How about it? I mean, you can say the benefit of winning close games is going to benefit them in October. I would agree with that. But yes, they did not step on anyone's throat. They certainly didn't make their presence known. Maybe they play up to the competition this week at home against the Royals and the Red Sox, who you still do have to play up to.
3 for 20 with runners in scoring position. Forgot about that one.
That's what it felt like for sure. And 2 of them were in the same inning.
Yes.
Wells and Judge.
On Friday. Yeah. So then after that, they got 1 hit with a runner in scoring position, and it was, what was it? It didn't score a run.
Great.
Just so you know.
Just
so you guys are aware, there was a hit with runner in scoring position, and the runner did not score.
And they scored on a double steal, so can't predict baseball.
Double steal, ground out, sac fly.
I don't know what happened to the Yankees, by the way, also, but they gained a game in the Pythagorean over the weekend. They're 82-61, but the Pythag says they should be 84-59. They've been trending 1 game off their real record for like a month and a half now, and now suddenly they're 2 wins worse than they should be. So
Apparently.
Figure it out. And they won 2 games over the week. So figure it out. Maybe the Pythags say they should have won on Sunday, and it's ruining their lives. You guys wreck so many of my days. Off day next Monday, off day the Monday after that for everybody checking in on off days when you can breathe and unhinge your belt a little bit. And give Anthony Rizzo some love because he got it from the Wrigley crowd. Deserved it. First time coming back since being traded in 2021.
Crazy to think about.
Crazy to think about. That was not odd at all. They used his walk-up music. They gave him constant ovations. They gave him more on Saturday. This was Cubs Hall of Fame weekend.
People say it was weird.
No, I didn't think it was weird.
Oh, no, okay. I could see fans being like, this is excessive, and it's like...
I could see fans saying that.
Yeah, but it was like, he fucking won the World Series for them that year.
Yeah. Chris Bryant comes back more often. He doesn't play baseball anymore, so...
Yeah, Chris Bryant quit baseball.
He pretty much did quit. They offered him, hey, you can sign a short contract with a Major League Baseball team, or you can spend 8 years...
in a dungeon,
in a place that you're not going to be watched. And he'll be like, I guess, but can I also not play in those unwatched games? His agent's like, really? That's what you want? Yeah. I want to go somewhere where nobody's paying attention. And then I'm even going to let those fans down. I won't participate. And they're like, all right, fine. Best we could do is 180 mil. Really? Okay. But Rizzo comes back, gets these great ovations. They play his walk-up song. He's going to be a Cubs Hall of Famer someday, if not a regular Hall of Famer. We all saw when he got traded away from the Cubs in summer 21, he walked around Wrigley with his family and took pictures and spent a lot of time reflecting on the stadium. A lot of us believed that he would eventually find his way back there, maybe as a coach or maybe as however long his Yankee tenure was, maybe honestly at the end of 2021, because he was going to hit free agency. He'd find his way back there. The Yankees found a way to keep him on short deals, and now they've got him on another one, and he's got an expensive option for next year. But over the weekend, he was asked about his return, and he said, I love it here. It'll always be special to me, but I'd like to retire a Yankee. Was it PR? Was it fan service? It didn't really serve the fans who were wondering how they're going to afford Juan Soto already, but I think it's worth remembering that $17 million is not getting picked up, but it comes with a $6 million buyout figure regardless. Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo went to the U.S. Open alone last week, while Giancarlo Stanton and Austin Wells and Anthony Volpe went together. So 2 different groups of Yankees went to the U.S. Open, and one of them was Judge and his best. We know they're best friends, but sitting alone in a box talking about their future. If Anthony Rizzo wants to retire a Yankee, 1, he's got a pretty powerful ally who can make that happen, and 2, he's not just going to say that without Judge's blessing. So given that they're going to waste $6 million this offseason to get rid of him anyway, $9 million deal for next year sounds pretty likely at this juncture. I see no reason to believe they're going to move on from Anthony Rizzo at this point. The only bummer is that the buyout figure is going to come as soon as the season ends, right? So they can't wait for a Juan Soto contract before they make a decision like this. They're going to have to sink $6 million into Rizzo anyway.
Well, I think the buyout's for this payroll, right? Or is it for next year's payroll?
I think it's for next year.
It is? Fuck.
The team option. So, you're going to make it, but what you want to do, you don't want to pay him, you don't want to give him the buyout and then a couple months down the line re-sign him for $1.5 million. Yeah. What you want to do is just really quickly extend him for 8 or 9, including that buyout money. So we'll see if they can get that happening, but they won't be able to wait for Soto. You'd love to be able to just go to the front office and Judge and Rizzo say, hey, we know he's coming back. We'll come up with a number based on the Soto contract. Is that cool? And then they'll leave for a couple months and he'll just train under the assumption that he'll be back with the Yankees. Yeah. But you can't, you're going to have to make the Rizzo decision first. And they're going to make the Rizzo decision, I think. So you're going to have to get Juan Soto on board with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is for next year. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking.
It'd be great if you could randomly tack that onto this year and never think about it again. But
yeah, it would be fun if you could do that retroactive. In line with, Cubs fans' attentiveness and energy was that display all weekend. They knew Anthony Rizzo was there. They made sure to make their presence known and show their respect and honor a guy who helped win them a World Series after 108 years of not winning one. I just looked at Chris Bryant's stats. He hasn't even played a full season's worth of game in Milwaukee, in Colorado in 3 years.
He certainly hasn't played one in Milwaukee.
He definitely has not played one in Milwaukee. But
hasn't played one in Colorado.
159 games in his last 3 years with the Rockies.
This was a Hall of Famer. And
Rookie of the Year, MVP.
Even in 2021, I still think he was a Hall of Famer.
Fuck yeah.
And he put up
was one of my favorite players.
Put up an 850 OPS in 42 games with Colorado in 2022. And so we were like, hey, I'm not a fan of what you're doing, but if you're just trying to chase the bag and put up stats in an inflated offensive environment to strengthen your Cooperstown case, I get it. And since then, in 117 games, he's hit 12 homers with OPS marks of 680 and 623 when active.
Crazy.
He's 32 and done, and he's going to retire with – he's got 184 homers right now. Does he get to 200 in his career? I say no.
He might not. What's insane was he was on that 107-win Giants team, right? They traded for him.
Yeah, he was having a good year that
year. Yeah, he was having a good year that year too. So, oh man, I don't know. But anyway, Rizzo was probably more of the guy there, even though Bryant won the – I feel like Rizzo was just more representative of the Cubs and the Cubs fan base. I could be wrong. Cubs fans tell me. I mean, I'm wearing a Cubs hat, so. But – yeah, I mean, that was someone they got via trade from the Padres in that crazy deal in 2011 or 2012 or something. And then Rizzo just comes in and he immediately latches on as the starting first baseman, immediate power hitter, immediate Gold Glover, immediate MVP candidate, and was integral to the entire operation the Cubs had built, the culture, everything. So when I think of that World Series team, I really do think of him first before Bryant. I'm not saying that because I'm biased or anything, because I have no attachment to Anthony Rizzo, but that's just my baseball fandom. It was nice to see that. That said, I don't like if the Yankees bring him back. It's just not good. It's just not. They need to move on. They need to get new pieces. Whenever they have the opportunity to close a door on somebody who's not providing exactly what they need to do that. That's it. And I'm not anti-Anthony Rizzo. I loved when we traded for him. I wasn't a fan of the contract that he signed, before 2023?
When he could have been either Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson.
Yep. Yeah, that's where you were sitting there and you're like, oh, the Yankees are just settling for what they know is going to be consistent, solid production and a median price tag. And they're not going to go above and beyond to get someone who's going to last longer, who's more athletic, who has more stardom power at this point in their career. So, their decision kind of soured us on Rizzo too. And then you have the head injury, which not his fault, but insane circumstances, and now you've reached a point where you spent a lot of money on somebody to be a barely above average 105 OPS plus with the Yankees in 355 games. That just doesn't warrant any more money from the team heading into his age 35 season. Again, I think he's been solid. I think he was on track to bringing exactly what he needed to bring to the Yankees last year before his injury. But again, injuries with this team, and we've seen them affect players. TJ LeMahieu currently be affected by injuries to the point where I like the guy a lot. I don't think he could play baseball anymore. Or maybe you have the combo of the pressure and baseball in New York. I don't know, but Yankees need to stop letting all of these situations play out longer than they need to. Gleyber Torres, perfect example. Luis Severino, perfect example. Aaron Hicks, perfect example. We can revisit the last 5 years and come up with a lot more other disappointing cases. But yeah, the flowery language from Rizzo, I'm glad he wants to remain a Yankee. I'm glad he likes it here. I don't know who that's going to serve if he comes back for 2025, unfortunately.
I know who it's going to serve.
Anthony Rizzo?
Aaron Judge.
Aaron Judge.
We'll see. Look, I'm not in favor either, but I'm just saying don't be shocked. But hey, looked a little bit more like himself over the weekend. Maybe it was the Wrigley crowd. Maybe it was the break. Maybe it was the return, further declouding of his brain after the head injury. We could really use him September and October. We could use another presence from the left-handed side of the plate. I don't think next year is the year for more Anthony Rizzo, but I know he's here now. DJ LeMahieu did not start a game over the weekend. You want to talk about people who shouldn't be on the playoff roster? DJ LeMahieu should not
play. Yes,
does not play anymore and shouldn't play anymore. But we'll talk more about the playoff roster. Hopefully, that might be a fun thing to do next week when things get a little more clarified. Maybe the week after that. Who knows? I don't want to wait any longer. I want to get clinched. Put me in the playoffs.
Get clinched.
Put me in the playoffs. Does the playoff roster change based on whether you win the East or win the wild card? It actually might. So we have to wait a while on that. But we will give you some projections before it actually drops, and so we look smart. Thank you for joining us. 2:00 Eastern every Monday, every Thursday, all podcast platforms in the aftermath. If you're not on the YouTube, but if you are, we appreciate you joining us. We see the viewership. Thank you for joining us. I'm Adam Weinrib. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weinrib. Thomas Carannante, where can the people find you?
Ooh, I'm at Tommy's_takes. We are both at the official Yanks Go Yard Twitter account. That is Yanks Go Yard FS. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Very important, very crucial. We're going to be here to inform you all Yankees, and we're going to have a good time doing it, or at least the best we can. Also, head on over to yanksgoyard.com. That's where all the content is. We're staying up to date with everything. We're heading down the stretch. Playoffs are around the corner. We're not going to miss a beat. And over the next week or so, we may have a guest for you. Just going to tease it. Keep you guys on the edge of your seat. And we'll talk to you on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern live right here. Thanks, everybody.
Little tease. Shout out, everyone, for joining us. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you on Thursday.